Beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Smoking big cigars. I hope you're ready for what's coming now. I'm the one, I'm the lady that will bring it down. There's a joint on the corner where the big boys play, where the whiskey's running like the rivers, but they all never come for the booze and bass. I'm the one, I'm the lady that'll rock this place. That'll rock this place. That'll rock this place. Rock this place. Rock this place. Rock this
Welcome to Winning in the Workplace, where we help executives, managers, and supervisors become great leaders by becoming more aligned and become a more cohesive leadership team with each other and across departments. I am your host, Maurice Velasquez. We're broadcasting this podcast on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, and many other platforms. To find me on these platforms, simply type in Maurice Velasquez or Winning in the Workplace. Again, thank you for joining me. Before we get started, visit me at my website at mauricetraining.com. There you can download my book, Journeying Beyond the Storm, and How to Build High-Performance Teams. Actually, it's 2 different books. And soon I'm going to be publishing and announcing another book. So be on the lookout for that. Then register on the website, yourself and your team and your group of leaders, for my 12-week course on how to get out of storming, how to build and how to rebuild an aligned and cohesive leadership and management team approach. All right, go to mauricetraining.com. We have a great show for you today. I have Melinda Walsh in the studio with me. She's going to talk to us about the importance that if we really want to be great leaders to others, we have to first be great leaders to ourselves. If we want to manage others well, we have to manage ourselves well first. Before we bring Melinda on, I want to bring up a topic that has been coming up quite a good bit with me and my clients, and it's the whole issue of managing up. And here's what I mean by that. Now, managing up is I usually ask the folks that I work with is, what makes a great manager, or either upper manager, even when executives have to manage folks or have to be involved in management, everyone says, well, it's me and my team. And usually what they mean is they have to manage the people below them. And then I say, okay, well, who else do you have to manage? And they say, well, we have to manage projects. I said, yeah, okay. Some people differentiate between leading people and managing projects. That nuance, of course, we can get into it later. I'm talking about just who do we manage as far as the people? And they say, well, no, I manage my people. Who else? I guess that's it. And I go, no, there's more people that you manage. And so when I explain to them that managing and being a great leader as a manager, absolutely, you have to manage your people downward, but you also have to manage up. In other words, and this is where the disconnect happens. What do you mean me having to manage up? I don't manage my boss. And I tell people, well, wait a minute. I know you don't manage your boss, but if you don't figure out your boss, then, or the person or the people that you give reports to and your accountability, then there's going to be a great disconnect because, and then I hear things like, well, I don't know, it's their job to manage me. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Let me ask you this question. The people that report to you, do you want them to figure you out? Or do you want them to wait around for you to manage them? And they go, see, at that point, now it starts connecting. Oh, I see. I said, well, let's take one step further. What about your peers? Do you manage them? Oh, well, I don't manage my peers. That's the whole problem. I said, so you don't manage that relationship? Well, no, I mean, I manage it. Okay, but are you in the front seat of the relationship? Or are you kind of just waiting for them? And so the point is that as leaders, it's all about relationships, and we have to manage those relationships. And so we have to think in terms of a cross, okay? It's managing down and connecting with the people below us. It's managing up to the folks that are above us. It is primarily also managing to the side of us. And that's the whole network of individuals that we have to manage those relationships. And we can't just stand back by and say, well, yeah, I'm just going to wait, because it just doesn't work that way. So think in terms of managing up and connecting with folks and figuring them out while you figure yourself out. And the more you're conscious about that, the better leader you will be. All right, we can spend a whole lot, and I have a lot of podcasts coming up on this, but let's go ahead and bring Melinda in. I'm excited to have her. And Melinda, are you still in the studio?
Hey,
all right, hey.
Hey, everybody. Yeah,
hey, good.
I'm here. I'm
Look,
great. Glad to be here.
I always ask this question. Did my people give you coffee?
Of course. They know how to take care of everybody.
Exactly. Hey, virtual coffee, virtual red carpet. It's great to have.
Absolutely. I feel so taken care of. And I think that's a
wonderful.
great example of managing your peers.
That's right. That's right. Hey,
Looking out for their welfare.
So far, you're staying in script, so good job.
Thank you. I try.
No problem. No problem. It is great to have you here. I hope I did fairness to how I introduced you, and but I want to talk a little more about that. But I got to formally introduce you in a minute. So, but before we do that, you heard a little bit of what I said. Okay,
I did.
What do you think about that? I mean, how crazy am I? Or make some sense about that.
Well, the thing that popped into my head was sometimes we forget that everybody we deal with is a person. You know, whether they're above us on the, on the org chart or below us or beside of us, they're all people. And as people, we have similar needs. We have emotions, we have moods, we have things that are important to us. And I think it's really easy sometimes to get lost in the story that, oh, this person above me needs to be treated differently than the person below me or to the side.
Right.
And, that's where we can really kind of get enchanted by a story that really doesn't serve us. And so I love the way you teed it up, because as a marketer, I'm a retired marketer. And one of the first things I learned is that everyone is living in the question. That means they're asking themselves this question, either consciously or unconsciously, of what's in it for me?
So the question is, what's in it for me?
What's in it for me? And so what I mean by that is like, we'll just say, hey, when you ask, hey, Melinda, would you like to be on the podcast? And it's like, well, okay, let me evaluate. What is in it for me? Well, I get to spend time with someone whom I respect and admire. I get to share some of my ideas with people who are listening and viewing, at the moment.
Okay, now you're already 12 feet deep into this. This is really good. So basically, if I want to connect with everybody, I have to recognize that's what everyone is asking themselves all the time.
All the time.
It didn't take you 2 minutes. I think you said the word story 4 times.
Oh, now you know my favorite topic.
Yeah, that's right. See, whenever I talk, I mean, you don't have to prod me long. I say alignment all the time. Alignment.
Oh, okay.
So the story that's happening, or the question that's happening in everyone's head, is what's in it for me? Because without that, it doesn't make sense. People don't buy in. What's happening there?
We all live in our stories. And we are story generating humans. It's just how we operate in the world. And so if something happens, we have an event, but then we also have our interpretation of that particular event. What did it mean? Let's say the boss sends out an email. Hey, can you meet with me at 3 p.m.? We immediately start generating stories about what's going to happen in the future based upon our interpretation of what happened in the past.
So is that where we come into things like assumptions? You're assuming a certain bias into a topic when you go into a meeting, and is that where assumptions come in?
Well, I don't use the word assumption. Sometimes I'll use the word predispositions. We are predisposed to act in certain ways. We are predisposed to think in certain ways based on our history, based on how we've interpreted things in the past, based on what has worked for us and what hasn't.
Got it. I want to come back. I think you and I are we're already on the deep side of the pool, which is great. I love it. But let me introduce you. I haven't even introduced you.
Yeah, hey.
This is Melinda. All right, Melinda and I, we go back like a long time, okay? We worked on tons of projects together. It's a delight to work with you. And I do want everybody to know that, yes, when you hear Melinda talk, I have had the pleasure and the benefit of seeing her in action, because every time I'm facing the things that you're going to hear from, I go back to her. and I say, hey, Melinda, help me out. So I highly recommend her. She'll give us her contact information. But Melinda is a fantastic marketer, a great communicator. You wrote a new book. Is that correct?
I did.
Are we going to talk about it? Hold it up.
Let me show you. Okay. Yeah. It's called Outrunning Age.
Congratulations.
Life with courage, compassion, and a few blisters.
Wait, say the tagline again, because I stepped on you on that. Say it again.
The title's Outrunning Age, Meeting Midlife with Courage, Compassion, and a few blisters.
Great. That's exactly what I'm not wanting to do. It's like, the whole thing about courage, that sounds pretty good. Blisters, she's dealing with the first sentence, the first three words, facing midlife, it's
right. It's,
it happened fast. All of a sudden,
it really does. Tomorrow gets here really quickly.
Really fast. No, that's great. All right. So we're going to tie it into all this.
Sure.
All right. So when you and I first talked about this, we talked about a very good theme being here, that in order to be a great leader, okay, you have to be a good leader of yourself.
Absolutely.
And when you told me that, when you said, Maurice, I really think that's fantastic. That's exactly what we need. So start diving into that, okay, and help us dissect that and help us understand, what does that mean and how do we do that? How do we start tackling self in order to be a better leader of others? Go ahead.
Okay. When I was learning to manage other people, I didn't realize that because I had not managed myself very well, I hadn't managed my mood. I hadn't managed how I say things. And I was a director on a film set for quite a while. And I started getting feedback. I was like, Melinda, the way you're saying things is just no. I mean, I had like a couple of revolts, on set, which scared me. I kind of went through a whole series. What's wrong with me?
You didn't go through that.
Oh, I know. It's stuff I read about.
I don't want you to TMI, but when you say it's how you say, what does that mean? Like, for example, like what,
Let's see. It's about saying things in a way that's not going to create an inadvertent nuclear option. And there are certain ways that we say things, or that we can say things, that can really trigger people into defensiveness. And when someone gets defensive, they quit listening.
Right. Okay.
So one example would be, oh, you need to.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Don't you love that when someone says that to you?
Need to. Yeah. I actually heard somebody catch themselves. They said, okay, Maurice, what you need, well, no, you need to do anything, actually. Here's what I recommend. You know what I'm saying?
Here's what I recommend. Or just ask a question. Have you thought about, you may consider doing this instead? And I know you work a lot with the DISC personality profiling system, and I do too. I'm a high DI. And one of the things that I would suggest to anyone wanting to deepen their manager skills is to take the DISC, if they have not already, and learn how really incorporate how different DISC personality styles prefer to be talked to. I almost said need to be talked to, but we kind of do. A DISC, somebody who is high D, give me bullet points, summarize, save the information for after. But a high C needs the information, and they need detailed information. Right. So it's really helpful as a manager to know the personality style and the communication style of the people above you, below you, and to your side.
Okay, so let's park ourselves for a couple minutes there, because it is essential. In order for me to lead others, and you're saying I have to lead myself, I do have to understand this personality right here.
Yes.
All right. So in the DISC profile, and by the way, whether it's DISC or Myers-Briggs or any one of the other programs, they tend to be similar. So just whichever one you're using, use it. Right. So it's about understanding how to approach others. The one part I find difficult in this, not only conveying it, but also living it out, give me your thoughts, is the harsh reality of how we're being perceived. In other words, as a high D, I don't perceive myself the way that others perceive my high D-ness to be. And we do everything possible to try to convince ourselves and others that, no, that's not me. Don't perceive. And yet we behave in a way that proves to them that we are that.
Right. And the other thing that's going along here too is we want to manage our public identities. We want to control how people think of us. We want their story to be the story that we have about ourselves.
Ooh, that's good.
And
that's good.
Part of learning to bring those two stories into alignment is becoming a better observer of yourself. To
Okay, go ahead. What do you mean? Observe. Okay, what am I observing?
To also know that whenever you come to a conversation, you bring certain biases. You show up, sometimes you may show up kind of defensively, ready for a fight, when the other person may not be, because in a past story is influencing the story that you think you're going to have.
Okay,
So,
you just touched on 2 or 3 things there. One of them is your body language, right?
it's not so much body language, Maurice, as it is a mood. It's an attitude.
Is it an intensity or lack of intensity?
It's an awareness that certain moods tend to bring about they tend to generate certain actions. For example, if somebody did something that you didn't like and you haven't had any kind of a clearing conversation with them about it, you may walk into the next conversation feeling a little resentful, of them. Maybe they dropped the ball on something. Maybe they said something in a meeting that made you look bad. So knowing that you are in a mood of resentment means that you can manage your actions with this person.
Okay.
Sometimes resentment makes you want to be passive aggressive about somebody.
I think that, I do that with you too.
We're human.
We all do that with each other, right?
And we have a choice as to how we respond, in that moment. We may interpret something as being resentful about when it's really not. Have you ever talked with somebody that said, I was like, I can get all wound up about stuff. And high Ds we tend to see disrespect when it's not necessarily there. Someone else might say, that's not a, thing. But if I don't take the time when I can feel my emotions getting high to take a deep breath and check in and go, okay, what am I feeling? What thought did I just have that brought that into my awareness? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm not mad about this. I'm mad about something that happened yesterday. So let me not take it out on this person that I'm managing today.
This all falls into what we're talking about is being aware of yourself.
Yes.
Or understanding yourself, right? Or looking at yourself and understanding how it is that you operate. And what I've heard you say is mostly is what is it? It's how you operate. There's got to be an element in there as to why do you operate that, right? Let me ask you this. Yeah. Is it fair to say that there's this thing in TikTok that you see little videos? It kind of goes like this. Oh, they're not going to notice. Yeah, they're going to notice. No, they're not going to notice. Yeah, they're going to notice. And they show this video of whatever it is that person's doing, thinking, oh, they're not going to notice. And if you're watching this video, go, I would notice that if, and it's hilarious because there's a ton of those videos out there. Okay. And I'm hearing you talk and I'm going, so we all do these things. We all bring these moods into conversations.
Right.
Because we honestly think the other person's not going to notice.
Oh my gosh. You just said the most insightful thing, because that's what happens. We think we are the most insightful, brilliant people ever, and we can analyze everybody around us. And yet we think we're opaque. We don't realize that our moods walk into the room before us.
Right.
We don't realize that we may be nice to our face. Our words may say one thing and our actions may say something else. And we think we've got everybody fooled. And let me tell you, we don't. I
was being interviewed by a company. I was in my second interview, and that second interview lasted like 9 minutes. Okay. It didn't go well. It didn't go well at all.
Oh, no.
And so, he stopped it short. He was very kind, and I said, okay, something happened here. I did ask him, I said, okay, something happened here. I didn't connect with you. And listen to what he told me. He said, Maurice, I figured you out within the first 3 minutes.
Did that surprise you?
Yes. I was very young into this. And when I asked him, okay, what did you figure out? And Melinda, he described me to a T. And he said, and look, Maurice, I don't think you're the right fit. And for the first time, I understood what that meant, Yeah. And it's like, he told me what the team makeup is and everything. And he left me with was one of my biggest holes that I had in my early career. He says, and I don't think you're there yet knowing how to adapt.
Wow.
And wow, because what I'm hearing you say is if we don't catch us first, how are we going to help others?
Yes. Yes, that is absolutely right. I think that was a great example of you could have, let's say that they brought you into that company, you could have created all kinds of havoc. Just, we don't know what we don't know, Maurice.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's our blind spot. And part of being a good manager is to be willing to accept feedback on how you show up. That kind of ties back into what you said. We don't know how we come across. We think we come across one way, but you ask somebody else, like, oh, Lordy, no, they're just.
All right. I am going to chase this rabbit for a second, okay? Sure. Because in leadership, and I've helped hundreds of companies, the number one obstacle that I find is exactly what you're talking about, that whenever they ask their people, the frontliners, what are the issues? Oh, yeah, they'll tell you. Okay. But what they're not willing to tell you is their supervisor. Okay. And the supervisors, they don't want to tell you, oh, it's the manager. And the manager doesn't want to tell you, oh, it's the upper manager. Why? Because none of them are willing to hear the critique. Because none of them are self-aware and everyone's in defensive. Yeah, tell me what the problems are, but I know I'm not the problem, right?
The finger is pointing at everyone else that nothing changes.
Correct. All right. So this goes all the way back. If you know yourself and you know your strengths and your weaknesses, you're likely not going to get as defensive as if you are just walking around thinking no one's going to tell.
Right. That is a learned skill. There's two things at play. Part of it is your personality. Some people are more open to feedback without beating up on themselves as a result than others. I know for me, one of the biggest things that I had to overcome is a feeling of shame, because I felt like, oh my gosh, if somebody said, hey, Melinda, you could do this better. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm not living up to other people's expectations. I've let someone down. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I had this whole story going on.
That's a strong word, shame. That's a strong word. I've always been calling it looking down on yourself. You're actually calling it shame.
I own it. I absolutely own that shame kept me defensive. I also made excuses. If someone came to me in a loving way or a kind way, it's like, hey, Melinda, you did this. Well, I would excuse it because I couldn't handle the strength of that emotion. And so, you know how much fun people are who make excuses and don't own their behavior are to be around. It really impacted my relationships. And I couldn't see it until, I did some specific work around shame and had to learn to accept feedback. And so that's one element. The manager needs to go do whatever work they need to do. And that's probably a longer conversation than this podcast, to be able to accept feedback. And the second thing is people need to learn, strong words here, how to give feedback effectively. Remember what I said about, my coaching training has been about how to use language so that you don't turn someone off. You don't invite defensiveness. Like if I come to you and go, Maurice, you've missed our last 3 appointments. You are so inconsiderate of me, lazy on your part. I start throwing out assessments about you.
Those are assessments. That's judgment that you're bringing on shame. It reminds me of what my dad used to tell me. I had a coach that treated me that way. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah. And
so instead, to learn to give effective feedback, it might sound something like, Maurice, you've missed the last 3 of our appointments. And, I wanted to let you know how that affected me. I had to change my day because of that. And I know you to be a good person. I know you to be a caring person. Was there something that was going on? You learn to ask questions. Most people are of good intent. And so,
all right. On that one, you're going to throw that back at me with a question. Was there something? And that would probably make me want to say, well, yeah, Melinda, there was something, and probably have to do with you or not. You know what I'm saying? But then at that point, that's your chance to now listen to what was actually driving my bad behavior, right?
Exactly. Listening is such an important part of learning to manage. And so when you listen, and you have to be prepared to hear something that you may not be comfortable hearing. Let's say that I had done something that you were mad at. And it's like, well, I got to own it. I just didn't tell you and didn't want to. And at that point, I may pull out what I call the power tool of relationships in business, and it's called making an effective request. And
say it again. What?
Making an effective request.
What is that?
So if I were not self-aware as a manager, I might get really resentful of you for missing those appointments. And resentment kind of carries an element of revenge.
Oh, yeah. I need to get it off my chest because I want you to feel how I felt. And you're about to feel that right now.
Right. So I'm going to unload on you and tell you everything I've been holding on.
Honestly, I don't really want to know why you were late. I just want you to know you were late.
See how this can go down the tube really quickly?
What are you talking about? That's my favorite management style. I'm a high D, of course.
The person who yells the loudest is right.
That's right. And when I'm late, it's because I'm Colombian, so I have a reason.
Touche. Oh my gosh.
Hey, Maurice, are you always late? I'm like, you mean you Americans aren't? This matters to you. Okay. I didn't realize that.
How do you overcome two differences two differences for understanding about what being on time means? You're right. Latin countries have a little bit more flexible relationship with time, sometimes that in a business setting would be helpful. And so you make a request.
So you were going to talk about, of course, I distracted you. You were going to make the power. What is it?
It's the power of an effective request.
Okay. All right.
And there are certain elements with an effective request. The first thing is to choose your time to have the conversation.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's
Maurice,
good.
do you have a minute?
No, I don't. But
yes. Like, okay, well, could I get with you this afternoon at 1:00?
Okay. Got it.
So be on a time to have the conversation.
Okay. So I'm working on ABC. You're not on my mind right now because I'm working on ABC. You walk in because you're ready to talk,
right,
but I'm not ready to talk. So that moment's not the right moment. By setting it up correctly with a mutual agreement of when to talk.
Yes. The right conversation at the wrong time is the wrong conversation.
Oh, say that again. That was good. Say it again.
The right conversation at the wrong time is the wrong conversation.
Okay. I don't have a microphone. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Here. Mic drop. I mean, okay. I should have been bringing my mic drop. If they're okay. That is good. All right. So wait, let's apply a couple of layers to this. Okay. The right conversation at the wrong time is the wrong conversation.
It is, because it's not going to be effective, because you need to have a committed speaker and a committed listener.
The right conversation in the wrong manner is the wrong conversation.
Also, yes. But you first,
So,
because you can bring in a conversation that you've thought it out. Your side is great. You've really been intentional and conscious about the request that you'd like to make. But if the other person isn't listening, it's not an effective conversation. It's the wrong conversation. It's the right conversation, but you've had it at the wrong time.
All right. I'm going to probably want you back. No, I'm definitely going to want you back. Because this gets into this whole issue that happens in corporate America, that we are all now broadsiding and bombarding each other because of this whole issue. When I'm ready, I want to talk with you. And so we don't have rhythm meetings. We don't have set meetings anymore. We all now do hallway conversations. We're all bombarding each other in email because it's of this dynamic, which you're talking about here. We're not setting the tone. No, not the tone. We're not setting. It's more than just, you're talking about
the context, really. Is now a good time to have this conversation, because as the speaker, what I want is to be effective. What's in this for me? I want to be able to have an effective conversation with Maurice, because I would like to make a request that from this point forward, Maurice be on time. And if he can't come, looks like it won't be on time, will you just call me and let me know? Will you manage it?
So first of all, so you're saying setting up, this is all part of the power of the request, right? It's the power of the request is all about the logistics of, I think you said it, a ready speaker and a ready audience.
Yes.
Okay. So it's the logistics of it. Okay.
Yeah,
do you have a few minutes right now? If you don't, that's okay. How about 2:00?
Yes.
It can be that simple, right?
Yeah.
And then it can also be my department and your department are constant at odds. We need to be in front of each other as talking back and forth in set times so we can be listening to one another.
Yes.
Could we apply it there?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is that setting up the environment to make the ask? Is that what?
You want the odds to be in your favor, because how many times have you gone in to talk with somebody and you can tell that they are distracted?
90% of the people that talk to me all the time, they tell me that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a little bit unexpected. And in a way, I mean, it's a sign of respect to the other person and their time.
That's
It's
good.
like, hey, is this a good time to talk? It's like, or I can see you're busy. Can we talk in 15 minutes? And so if someone comes up to you, it's your job to be self-aware enough to say, oh, this isn't a good time for me, but I can talk in 15 minutes. One of my favorite people used to say, okay, Melinda, we can talk now, but I only have 35% of attention that I'm able to give to you. If you wait 15 minutes, I can probably give you at least 88% of my attention because I got stuff on my mind.
Yeah. My house, I've been instructed that I have to let everyone know when I have mentally disconnected. And I'm like, that I might as well just keep my hand up all the time because I'm constantly disconnecting. But yeah, this is good. This is good, Melinda. All right. So the power of ask, is that what you called it?
It's an effective request.
An
And so
effective
once
request.
you get the other person's attention, you've thought about what you're going to ask beforehand because you want it to be clear. And so, Maurice, in the future, when we agree to meet at a certain time, would you please be on time? And, you can either say yes or no. Now, what you have to check for is it's called like a shared understanding. What does on time mean for you?
Sure.
What does on time mean for me?
Yeah, no, sure.
Is it within 15 minutes? Is that, I'm still on time? Or is it?
No. I think it's very important. Just last week, me and a group of executives, it was the first time bringing them together. And so, yeah, we had to discuss that. Being on time is not walking in and then you go get your coffee. Being on time is not. And so everyone had to agree. Being on time is everyone's already gotten their coffee. Everyone is sitting down and we're all disconnected from our devices and we're all waiting for the meeting to happen. And it's like,
yes.
have the team members like, well, I got to get here 20 minutes before. And it's like, wow.
Right.
Wow.
And these are the things that never get discussed, Maurice, because we don't have a shared understanding of what the standards for meeting the request are. We don't talk about it because we think everybody thinks like we do. And if they don't, well, then what's wrong with them?
That's very good.
And that's
very
part of being a manager is to understand that not everyone thinks like you because they haven't had your life experience.
Tell me about earlier, before we came on, you told me about the enemy of learning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? You started telling me back then, and I'm like, wait till the recording comes on. Okay, but now I want to hear about it. How does that fit into all this?
Okay. All of us unconsciously or consciously have what I call an enemy of learning or enemies of learning. And some of them may be things like, I don't want to look bad. I want to come across like an expert, so nobody can tell me anything. Or, I already know that. Well, you may know that or you may not. So they're not open necessarily. I don't like the way this teacher is teaching, so I'm just going to shut down. You may have an enemy of learning that interprets any kind of new information as criticism for how you are.
Would it be right to call them something like wrong judgments or just unfounded or just things we got to check? Or am I categorizing those correctly? I'm not trying to take them in different directions.
No, I don't think that's it. What are you talking about? Like a wrong judgment is what?
Yeah,
I think of it as stuff that get our thinking, some of our thinking that gets in our way.
Got it.
How does it keep us from being the best that we can be? And I know for myself, before I encountered some of my own enemies of learning, that a lot of times as a D, we think we know it already. I will own that.
We think we know. I'm a high D. I'm a high dominant individual too. We think we know what we're saying.
Right.
And we speak as though we know what we're saying.
Absolutely.
But what we're really actually doing, we're just verbalizing it because we can't get to the point unless our mouths talk. So we're actually using the other person to get to the point, but yet throughout the whole time, we act like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it. Sometimes we also have a commitment to being right. We want to show up as the person who knows things.
Yep.
And if we're not right and somebody tells us something new, well, maybe I don't want to accept it because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be seen as wrong.
All right. So you would put all these as enemies of learning, right?
An enemy of learning.
All right. Yeah. And it does come back to your first point, and that is you have to take whatever personality test you're going to take and really read it and get comfortable with all that stuff about you, good, bad, and ugly, because other people will be able to tell, and you're going to be the last one to the parade.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so let me ask you a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that is the way to really learn and grow as a manager, is to always be open to learning. A lot of times we are afraid of the words, I don't know, because we think it look weak, particularly in a business setting. You're a manager, you're supposed to know. Well, I don't know everything.
Right.
Who can I ask? How can I learn? I want to gather information. And as a manager, I'm going to make the final decision, but I'm okay not knowing, because you never know where great ideas are going to come from.
Right, because if you're the one that knows, those other ideas are not going to get in because you already know, and you're probably shooting them down too.
Yeah, that is so true. And that has an effect on the people around you. If people are coming to you and saying, hey, Melinda, what about this? And you're in one of your enemies of learning, you go, nope. Well, how often do you think they're going to bring ideas to you?
Melinda, you and I are probably being a little too humble about this. And so let me do a checkpoint here. But I think that issue that you just touched on is probably at the core. It's at the belly of the beast of why employees are disengaged.
Yeah.
Their managers do not listen to them. Bottom line. But 90% of the problems, the frontliners know what the solutions are. They've probably tried to tell somebody, but yet no one is listening to them. And then we wonder, why are they disconnected and why they're disengaged? Your thoughts?
Exactly, because at some point you give up, you go into resignation. You go, why bother trying to fix anything? Because it won't do any good.
Right.
Nobody's listening. So as a manager, if you want to keep your position strong and your team strong, cultivate skills in listening. And what that means is keeping your mouth shut and listening, and not thinking of what you're going to say next, not criticizing internally the person that you're listening to. It means asking questions. One of my favorite questions is, I have two that I use a lot. One is in communication. It's not as much in listening, but it's making sure that what you said is being understood. And that question is, what is your understanding of what we just talked about?
Repeating it back before you... can we say this? Repeating it back before you give your opinion on it.
Yes. And you want to know if they heard you, you want to know if they understood you.
Correct.
So that's
it's understanding.
why I asked it that way. Yeah, what is your understanding of what we just talked about?
Okay. So to tell managers, look, stop walking around giving your opinions. That would be a really good tall order. We should really encourage managers to do. Stop walking around giving your opinions. Instead, repeat back to show that you understood when your people talk to you. Is that what you're telling me?
That's an aspect of it.
Okay.
A technique that I use when I'm in conversation, when I want to make sure that I've understood something, because boy, I can jump to a conclusion in a heartbeat, and it may or may not be right, may or may not be accurate. So I'll go, what I heard you say is da 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 da.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
Right,
or I'll even say, my understanding of what you just said is this, da, 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 da. How'd I do?
That's good.
Two things are happening when I do that. One is you are giving the other person a sign of respect, and that you are listening to them. You are taking the time to really try to understand where they're coming from. And when you have respect for somebody, they are more likely to have respect for you.
So it's not about whether I agree what you said, or that I even like what you said, or whether I know I'm actually going to kill your idea in 20 minutes because I'm the boss and I got the last say so. Right. It's got nothing to do with that, right? It's got everything to do for me to show you that I'm respecting you enough to listen to what you just said, and
Yes.
that I took the pause to let you know that, yes, I
Right.
understood what you said. I got
Yes.
it. I hear it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And what happens, a human interaction dynamic, is that when someone feels heard and understood, they are more likely to be open to your ideas.
Correct. No, without a doubt. I mean, yeah. I mean, I definitely want us to come back to this because we touched on 2 or 3 things that I think you and I could dissect a lot longer and deeper, and I think it'll be very
True.
helpful. So just be looking for another email for a bit. But let me ask you 2 quick questions because I know we're rounding third and we got to close this up.
Okay.
Is one of all, how much of this makes it into your book? And tell me a little bit about the book.
My training makes it into everything that I have and everything that I do. So what you'll read about in my book, it's the story of training to run a half marathon for the first time when I turned 60.
Oh,
And
good.
so
Okay.
that's why the book has running in the title. But what I found was more ways to manage my mindset as I get older and as the years come ahead. And it's the same kind of strategies that we've just been talking about for the last half hour. It's, where do I get in my own way? What do I need to do now in order that my future is going to be the one that I want? And that can apply to running, that can apply to getting older, that can apply to a promotion you may want. Because every choice you make today, every action you take informs and shapes your future.
Wow. Okay.
And
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So the book has that woven through there.
Okay. Good. So let me ask this next question. You're an ontological coach, right? What is that? What does that differentiate between a life coach? Okay. Explain it to me.
Okay. Ontology is just a big word that means way of being. And everyone has a way of being in the world.
Oh, okay.
And
All right.
that way of being is influenced by our past and the things that happened to us and the interpretations that we made about those events. And so we show up in habitual ways. And so we respond in habitual ways. And ontology is really focused about language. You've heard me say already, it's sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I've studied the structure of language to learn how to say things in a way that don't blow things up, to learn how to say things in a way that keep relationships strong, whether they're in the workplace or in the personal arena. Because language is how we operate in the world. And, I heard one of my coaches say one time that any relationship is just one long conversation. And so the quality of your conversation is directly tied to the quality of your relationship. So a lot of times our ways of being, we might have learned things from our parents, teachers, whatever, that weren't that effective, but we don't know it until we get feedback. And so that's what an ontological coach does, is shows people in a way where their breakdowns are, where they keep running into the head against the wall, alternate possibilities that will get them more of what they want.
Oh, that's great. Well, hey, look, how do we get in contact with you? Give us all your contact information. How do my audience get in touch with you? And how can we?
Well, probably the easiest way is through my website. It's melindawalsh.com.
Okay.
And there's a way that you can email me through there. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. So, and you can also, I have an Outrunning Age Instagram as well. So feel free to follow, send me a message. Would love to talk with you.
All right. So can't let you go without a commitment. You got to come back. All right. We'll set one up again and we'll pick up where we left off, because I know we teased a lot of things and we could dive into much. Thank you so much, Melinda, for coming and being part of this.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. All right. That was great, Melinda. Thank you very much. All right, everybody, remember, my podcast is every Friday, 8:15 Central. If you want to be a guest on the show, go to my podcast page and fill out the guest form. I would love to have you on the show. The page is winningintheworkplacepodcast.com. Winningintheworkplacepodcast.com. Oh, one more thing. You know that you and your team need to become more cohesive and more aligned. You know that your meetings are not effective and you leave them and go in different directions and you chase each other for performance. Don't put it off anymore. You have to get aligned. You have to get out of storming. Take my 12-week course. It's private. It's a private course just for you and your leadership team, only 2 hours a week, where I show you how to get out of storming and how to build and how to rebuild a more aligned and cohesive leadership and management approach. Email me or go to my page, mauricetraining.com. All right. So remember, in closing, at the core of leadership And great management is showing a united front with the other leaders to your entire organization. It's about being on the same page, speaking of one united message, being on the same voice, being a cohesive team. That level of alignment is the difference and your competitive edge. By aligning well is how you and your team and your company can win in the workplace. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.